just gonna start with questions. So fire away when you got them.
Like with Matt Entz and Eric Henderson in particular, how did you know that they were available or even gettable for you? And what was that process of trying to convince them to leave pretty good jobs to come here?
Yeah, it was two very different situations. Had some mutual contacts in the business that where we thought that Matt might be interested in moving to this level of a program for the right opportunity. And yeah, just kind of started with a conversation to share our vision with him and listen to his vision for his career and what he wanted to do. And I didn't really have any expectations going into the first conversation. I didn't totally know what to expect with his track record and all that he's done, but I knew it was something that intrigued me. I mean, the defensive impact and the linebacker development and all that was intriguing. There's a lot of guys that were intriguing from that standpoint, but you add in where we're at as a program that we're still certainly on our climb and still building in a lot of ways. And when you think of programs across the country that have built a consistent winner, a culture of toughness, guys that have really, I think, developed players at a really high level. You think of North Dakota State, you think of the coaches that have been there, the players that have been there, and that's one of the ones that always came to my mind. So to be able to add him from that perspective just to our program in general, and not just our linebacker room or not just our defense, was, to me, made it a no-brainer if it fit for him and his family. And he was, and then it turned out after the first conversation, he was just as excited about it as I was. So that one actually moved along pretty quickly, which was great. And Eric, had some mutual connections with Coach Lynn. Another one that, with where he was at, you're the defensive line coach for the Rams. You're coaching with one of the best coaches in the NFL. You're coaching maybe the greatest defensive lineman that's ever played the game. I mean, there was a lot of, okay, does this fit as well? But once again, that's why you have the conversations, and that's why you shoot big. And we told everybody that's what we were going to do in the beginning. We literally started with, we rolled the whiteboard back there into my office, and we said, all right, well, our goal in the beginning was, we had to find the right coordinator, and then it was, we want to have the best developers. Who do we think are like the best developers of defensive talent, culture, like all of that? Who are the very best? We ended up with 7 names on the board, and it was kind of just the dream list, right? It was like, if you could get anybody, who would it be? And we ended up whittling it down to 7, and then we ended up hiring 4 of the 7. So we added a pretty decent percentage.
How was it in the short time that they've been here impacted you?
It's been really good. A lot of it's been recruiting. So I've got a chance to be on the road with some of those guys, and even at the times when we weren't on the road together, you could feel the impact. I mean, when you go hire guys like this, people take notice. Recruits take notice. Our current players take notice. So you can feel kind of a shot of momentum in a lot of ways. I think that's exciting for everybody involved with this football program. And then it's been great here just the last couple of weeks to finally be able to all get in the meeting room together. I mean, really, with Eric, with his season going on so long with the Rams like it did, it was until after all of the January recruiting period before we were able to actually get everybody in there in a room and start installing and going through it all. So that part's been great. There's a lot of cool kind of synergy in that room already. A lot of very creative guys, a lot of guys from different backgrounds, and then I think Coach Lynn up to this point's done a great job, managing and bringing that room together.
Lincoln, obviously, you bring in Danton, a month or so before you bring in Eric, and Eric has that co-defensive coordinator title. And what did you see about Danton's willingness to work with him and split responsibilities there, and kind of because we assume that this defense was going to be Danton's vision, and how does Eric kind of fit into that? How do you see them working together?
Well, the defense is Dan's vision. Dan's a defensive coordinator. I mean, there's no split duties there. I mean, he's the defensive coordinator, and he's gonna set the direction. He'll be the ultimate decision maker in that room. Now, bringing in somebody of Eric's caliber, we would be crazy to not lean on him and his experience. His track record obviously speaks for itself, and so he certainly we felt like he was very deserving of that title, and certainly we're going to lean on him just like we're going to lean on all of the other guys in the room, and that's what's fun for I know Dan's really excited, and you guys will get a chance to visit with him here later, but you look in that room and it's like, all right, you had a defensive coordinator in Doug Belk, you had a head coach in Matt Entz, you had somebody with Eric's experience, obviously bring back Sean Nua, who we all think a lot about. I mean, it's like you got a lot of really good minds in that, and a lot of guys that have seen a lot, and a lot of guys that have been responsible for a lot. So, and that's a great feeling for a coordinator when you feel like you have guys in the room that are going to be able to give you impactful feedback and are not just yes guys. And I think that's important. But you got to have guys that at the end of the day they walk out of the room on the same page, which we will. And then you got to have a defensive coordinator in Coach Lynn that's that wants to bring in that caliber of guys and wants to listen and wants it to be very collaborative, and it will be. And so I just think it's fit well together, and he's got a great personality to really mesh the room.
Lincoln, go ahead.
When you talk about developmental coaches, how do you assess that? What do you look at in terms of finding the best developers?
Well, I think you look at the production of the players that they've coached over time. Like, to me, anybody can get this one great player, and yeah, sure, you were good and productive while you had this one guy or this one set of guys, but who's been able to do it consistently over time? And that's what we really looked at, was guys that had impressed us from afar, whether it was from a coordinator job or it was from coaching a position that you felt like their experience level added up, the production over time of their players year after year was at a high level, and I think that's been the easiest way for us to assess it. A lot of these guys we had mutual connections with, and that certainly helps when you're talking about the character of the guy, when you're talking about how well does he fit in the staff room with everybody. So there's a lot that goes into that assessment, and certainly, obviously, the recruiting piece is a big part as well. But the development side for us was huge, because I think we're at a little bit of a point in the program where we're starting to, I think, not get away, but probably evolve a little bit away from the transfer portal and starting to get more into really building through high school recruiting. But the only way that model works is you got to have what I think, you go get the best developers and talent, and you give the best high school players a reason for why they would want to sign to USC, and not just sign here, not just come here initially, but hopefully for the large majority of those guys stay here throughout their careers and get on that climb. And when you have great developers, that's how you put that together. And so, in putting this staff together, we've tried to keep that in the forefront of our minds, because we knew, at some point we knew we wanted to push away from the portal much more than we did the first few years. And I wouldn't take back anything that we've done the first few years. I think we did what we had to do to get this thing competitive, but in the long run, we want developers, and we want the majority of our players that start their career and end their career in this football program.
Lincoln.
Eric was someone who had a lot of success with the Rams, coaching a big group over there. They're a team kind of like on an upward trajectory. What did you guys pitch them to come here? And was there any doubt on your part being able to land in
them? I do think, we're fortunate enough to coach at a place that you can have a shot at anybody. I don't know that I don't know that we would have been able to get maybe a few of these guys, 2 years ago when we all first came here. I think the response, hiring a staff now versus hiring a staff 2 years ago was very different. I feel like when we took the job 2 years ago, it was seen as, I know us taking this job surprised a lot of people. And I think there was still a little bit of, all right, you got to go prove the trajectory a little bit and prove that this thing can be what it once was and what some of us think it can be again. I think the last 2 years, while certainly, obviously not everything's been perfect, but that proof has happened, and I could tell in not just the people we targeted, but the people that came after this job and that targeted this job themselves. It was just very different, and so I think that helped. And then we just decided we're not going to worry about a current job that these guys have. We're going to go after the best, and if there's not interest, that's okay. We'll move on. But I don't know that one person that we talked to, didn't have pretty sincere interest in this thing. And yeah, like you said, with a guy that's sitting there coaching the defensive line for the Rams, you don't always know that that's going to happen. You don't know in this day and age if a guy's saying, well, I don't really want to coach in college, I want to stay at the NFL level. Some of that comes down to personal preference, but fortunate for us that everything fit.
Coach, could you break down the individual strengths of each of the new coaches, from Coach Lynn to Emerson and Sabell, just being around them more now? What are their biggest strengths that you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Coach Lynn, the thing that I was most impressed about when we first talked was I think he's a really, really tremendous teacher. As he kind of regurgitated to me, how they install, how he teaches the positions, how he teaches the coaches. You could tell it was really well thought out, and it matched what I'd seen on tape in terms of the production of the players and of that defense as a whole. And he's got I think a real calm, patient demeanor, and I think will do a great job, like I said, of bringing the room together. Coach Entz, just, a real hard-nosed toughness about him. Obviously, great experience at all levels of a college football program. I think, really understands and sees the game in terms of all 11 on the field, and brings just great overall perspective. Eric has a great energy about him that you can feel already. You can feel it within the program, can feel it in the defensive line. There's an energy and a confidence about him. I think that's really, really exciting, and also I think has a really, really good football mind as well. Will certainly bring a lot of great ideas and thoughts. And then Doug, again, another guy that obviously understands all 11 very well. I think an excellent teacher in terms of the secondary. Tremendous, I think, with the relationships with his guys. But he from what I've seen up to this point, he does a great job, which sometimes can be tough for a coach, of having the personal relationships, being able to relate to guys, all of that, but also holding them accountable and being firm in the areas that are very important. And I've been impressed with his ability to manage that here up to this point.
Going through this process, what's changed about the way you think about defensive football, and what's most important, where the emphasis needs to be, and just things you weren't thinking about maybe a year ago but now are priorities?
Oh, I think that certainly in a little bit of a response to the changes in college football. I think the development piece to me, which I know I spoke on earlier, really sticks out. Because everybody thinks, well, all right, you just got to go get the right fit schematically that you think's right. Like there's way more to it than that. It's gotta fit within how you're trying to build a program. And again, I go back to, what do we want to become? We want to be a team that's largely based upon recruiting young guys, bringing them into our program, building them from the ground up. And the only way that you're going to do that is, again, you got to have elite developers. And so that, in a lot of ways, The scheme part was important. I think being able to adapt to the players that you have year in and year out and the different challenges you see week in and week out offensively, and being able to create challenges for those offense, like all that certainly was very important. But I think that the developing and the teaching of these guys to me was critical. I just think that's where it is. I think that can be our advantage. I think we have a staff right now that takes a backseat to no one, period. I believe no one in football, not just college football, and that was kind of the goal. That's why we went after the guys that we went after. And so, you know, I think when you take a step back and you start to say, okay, you know, if you're a defensive lineman right now, like, all right, well, you come to USC, you can get one of the best degrees on the planet, and you can get coached by a pair of defensive line coaches that, I mean, show me another pair at any level of football that have the resume that Eric and Sean do. Like, okay, that's a pretty good start. You know, that's a pretty good start. That's not just a reason why you would come to USC. That's a reason why you would come here, stay here throughout the length, get developed, and then what do you become in that mode and that culture with those coaches in 3 or 4 years? And that's the more that we can do that, bring in the right guys, have a chance to develop them with the guys that we have, that's when the program really builds, you know. And one group, I mean, I know they had some unique things happening off to the side, but you obviously have to give Michigan a lot of credit. I think they did a tremendous job of that over the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, go look at the first, 3, 4, 5 years of that thing. There was just kind of mixed results, but they built it, and in a lot of ways did it the right way. And then all of a sudden you look up and all of those classes have stacked on top of each other, and they hadn't had a lot of movement in and out of it, and they've had some really good coaches there. And now all of a sudden, you know, they went on a run where they're winning 12, 13, 14 games a year. And there's there's a lot of parallels between, you know, that job and that program 6 or 7 years ago and this one, in terms of one of the historically really good programs that had some down years and had to fight its way back to the top.
Lincoln,
As a follow-up, we talked in December about needing to get bigger up front. Was there a point last year where that really resonated with you and you realized that whatever the emphasis was, it needed to change and it needed to be about bulking up and getting bigger?
Yeah, I think definitely in the second half of the season that certainly showed up. You know, we played we played a pretty tough stretch of games there in the back half of the season. But that's, you know, that typically that November, you know, that November football, that's when that tends to show up. And I thought that we got a little bit worn down. We got a little bit worn down physically. Had some games, obviously, that we didn't stop the run very well. And yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a piece of me that believed that even going into the season, that was going to need to continue. I mean, I know we sat here 12 months ago or 13 months ago when we had the long sit down last year, and we talked at length about the depth up front and continuing to try to get bigger. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly just throughout the second half of the season, feeling like that we had to really make some real drastic changes there in terms of the body types to be able to play the way we wanted to play. And some of that was knowing, obviously, after we made the change defensively, that we were going to be going in a different direction in terms of schematics and how we use those guys, so it just kind of fit together.
Lincoln, just in terms of talking about your kind of personal goals as a coach and in your career, you know, a lot of NFL jobs opened up this winter, and ultimately for you in this kind of changing landscape of college football, just why did you feel committed to staying here, to building the defensive staff that you did? You know, why continue to build here, I guess?
Yeah, I want to get it right here. I really do. I want it really bad. Not for me. I just want it really bad for this program. I want it really bad for the current team, the former players, the former coaches, the fans, the university. I mean, that's why we left everything that we left. I mean, that's what we wanted really bad here. I certainly, there's some things with college football that need to get right, not just for coaches, for certainly far more than that. You know, certainly my hope that some of those things can get corrected to continue to make the job of everybody involved with college football, I don't say easier, that's not the right word, but maybe a little more manageable. And there's certainly some challenges there, but it's not to the point, certainly for me, it's not to the point where I'm like, you know, the heck with college football. I mean, we still have a tremendous product. The game is still tremendous. There's a lot of things that are, I think, very fixable that hopefully can happen. And yeah, just I'm at the place I want to be.
You had a bunch of recruits on campus in January and December too. And it just seemed like the impact that Eric Henderson has had in a short period of time, which is pretty great. What is it that resonates about with him, with recruits?
He's just got a great kind of just demeanor about himself, a great energy, a great confidence, and then you combine that with, you know, the history and the success that this guy's had, and you know, he left he left a great job, right? He left a great situation. He certainly didn't have to make that move, but this was something that he really wanted, and he was really energized by it. And you've just seen him carry that energy along in here to the first few months on the job, and I think just the challenge for both he and Coach Nua to build a defensive line that is worthy of being, you know, a college football playoff level defensive line. You know, that can be one of the best defensive lines in college football. Like that's all of our vision. That's what we want. That's what we expect to happen. That's what will happen. And it takes that energy. It takes that confidence to recruit, to develop, to do all of it. And he just has that. He just does. And he's got a really great gift for connecting with people. So he's been a great, I think, boost of energy and confidence just within the building. Really enjoy the way that he carries himself, and I'm just excited to get on the field with him.
When did you know you had a shot at him?
What's that?
When did you know you had a shot at getting him?
I mean, I felt like after our first conversation that, you know, because he expressed some interest in potentially wanting to get back into college one day, and so you could tell pretty quickly with the guy if there's legitimate interest or not. And I knew there was interest right in the beginning. I knew, and again, I mean, if there's interest in college, I mean, this is about as good as it gets. So I mean, that's, you know, I felt like there was a real shot. You know, I think the toughest thing was, again, he's working for a great guy, Coach McVay, and working for a great organization there with the Rams. And so I know leaving them was tough, but the more we talked, I felt like this was really where his heart was.
Coach, what went into retaining Sean Nua, the one all over defensive staff from last year?
Yeah, I mean, some of the other pieces, you know, fell into place there pretty quickly. I mean, we obviously, you know, we knew pretty quickly that we were gonna, you know, obviously we made the coordinator change in season. We knew pretty quickly we were going to do something different in the secondary, and then a lot of times with the coordinator deal, we knew pretty quickly we were going to do something different in linebacker as well. You know, both. There were some tough decisions on the front piece of it. I knew probably deep down that we probably would make at least one change there, and we had, you know, a couple of great guys and you know, Coach Manning had done a tremendous job in recruiting, and so there were some tough decisions to make. I mean, there's no question about it. But once you know, once Eric was on board, we kind of started looking at, okay, who would best fit to pair him with, because we know we're going to have two different coaches on the defensive front. I think you needed, from a numbers standpoint, I think you needed in recruiting. And yeah, just the more kind of stepped away and thought about it, felt like, you know, Sean's experience, felt like the tandem that we could create with those two would be really formidable. And had some really great discussions, very positive discussions, and yeah, Sean it just fit. It just did. And so I know Sean's energized, excited about it, and it's going to be fun to see those two guys working together.
Lincoln, what was the
spring?
What's that?
This is more like the spring, but with Zach running track and News playing baseball.
Yep.
What's their availability going to be like for spring? You're not know.
Yeah, they're not going to miss too much football. You know, the sports are very, very different. You know, where Zach's going to run some track, going to try to qualify for some of the, obviously the bigger meets down the line, but he won't be running, I think, a quote unquote full track schedule. So his availability will probably be a little bit more smooth than Deuce's. Baseball is certainly more of a challenge. We've obviously had pretty good experience with it with a couple of guys in the past, but so it's very doable. And we're fortunate that Andy and that group are so easy to work with, and so we've had great communication. And really the biggest baseball challenge right now is the practicing games, not being here, being right here. That's probably the biggest challenge. Now it's coming for good reason, obviously, with the new facility and the new baseball stadium on the way. But yeah, we've worked through it logistically. I don't think Deuce is going to miss too much. He's got some hour limitations on some of the days that they play, but he's very serious about both sports, and we're working hard to create a path for him to be successful in both.
Lincoln, what did you see with bringing in Jaden Maeva, and what was do you view Miller as the starter going into the spring? How do you see the quarterback room shaking out right now?
Yeah, now we wanted to add a young guy, but we wanted to add a young guy that had played. That was the number one thing when we decided to take a portal QB that we felt like we needed to address, and so we felt like we needed youth, but somebody that could also really come in here and compete for the job. And yeah, Jaden, we thought just kind of fit that bill more than anybody else in the portal. After the way Miller played in the bowl game, and not just the way he played that night, but really handled those 6 weeks. Felt extremely confident in him, and really felt like there was not much of a need to really pursue anybody that was older. And so that kind of just played itself out. And yeah, I was impressed with what Jaden did. I think played 9 or 10 games there at UNLV and did a tremendous job. And think he's got a lot of great ball ahead of him. So, yeah, we're going to let those guys duke it out. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about. But I think there's 2 starter level players in that room, 2 guys that have kind of proved it in different ways already, and they're both going to certainly get their shot here.
Coach, for Daniel specifically, obviously got to see
Okay.
it last year when UCLA held you guys in 3 rushing yards. So I'm curious, how much of a factor was that performance in the decision to move on?
It's one game. I mean, they defensively obviously played very well, and we didn't play very well. But it was, I would never base something off of one game. I mean, I knew coming into that game that just you could tell watching on film that it was a very, very different defensive unit from the one we had played 12 months ago over at the Rose Bowl. So, just the overall impact on the season. And the season that they had defensively, and how I thought some of the individual players that weren't necessarily strong players the year before, all of a sudden now they are. You could feel the difference that he made, and I would just say probably just validated, the obviously tremendous job that they've done.
Thank you, Coach Riley.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.